All right, everybody, welcome to the Graduation Equity Webinar Series. I'm Kathy Anderson. I'm an Assistant Director of Early Warning System. And today we are talking about living into your values with school culture. This meeting is being recorded and it should be available in the next couple of days on YouTube. Closed captions are available in the menu if you want to use those. And we'll share the PowerPoint with you in the chat. But we also have it on our webpage. Trying to figure out things. Oh no, happening. Okay. This webinar is brought to you through the Office of Student Engagement and Supports at OSPI. At OSPI, we believe each student needs to be prepared for post-secondary pathways, careers, and civic engagement. Our webinar series was created with the purpose of highlighting practices that increase access to education and ultimately to graduation. Through the webinars, we are striving to think about historical context and the opportunities we have to get curious, dismantle policies and practices that don't serve our youth. We want to make it possible for each student to have access to the instruction and support that will make them successful in school and in life. I feel really lucky to live here. I know all around the United States people are too hot and humid, but Washington really is paradise in August. I hope you're out there soaking up some last rays of sunshine and dipping your toes in some of our local water. In my life, I mostly travel the traditional lands of the Squaxin Islands, the Coast Salish, the Cowlitz, and the Squally tribes. Feel free to share the traditional lands where you're coming from in the chat as well. And yeah, that's good to see you. I'd like to acknowledge the Indigenous people who have stewarded this land since time immemorial and who still live here today. Welcome. Ideally, things like land acknowledgements happen through tribal consultation. It's a great way to get to know your local tribes and begin relationships that benefit students and their families. And if you want to know more about it, our Office of Native Education is here to help. We chose to start the year by talking about school culture because a school's culture impacts the entire community. School culture is an equity issue because it regulates how students and their families feel about attending, and how a school welcomes and encourages students has implications for their future success. I mean, I hope you're lucky enough to have a teacher or a mentor in your life, as both Chuck and Dave, that made attending their class the thing that you look forward to the most. There are some really amazing teachers out there, and you can just feel the difference when you walk into their classrooms. You know you're welcome. You know that they want you to succeed and become the best version of yourself. And safe enough to take risks that will push you. Today, we're talking about school culture specifically because these values underpin a feeling that reinforces that school is where you want. We're going to talk about school culture through some ideas connected to CBE, which is Connect, Build, and Envision Values. You'll get some examples of concrete actions you can take to lean into that culture that they've built in Sunnyside, and we have some resources to help you as well. I brought with me Dixie Grunenfelder. She is the Executive Director of Student Engagement and Supports at OSPI. And I've known Dixie for years and years, and she is just such a champion of this work. Welcome. And she has invited with her Dr. Chuck Salina, a longtime collaborator with us on Powerless to Powerful. He is an Associate Professor Emeritus at Gonzaga University. And we also have Dave Martinez. Dave's worked with Chuck extensively at Sunnyside High School, and he is the Director of Student Life and Athletics. We'll also have a panel of students with us, so welcome Maya and Angelique, and we also have a former Sunnyside student who works at OSPI with us, Brisa Sanchez. So we will see them a little bit later. And we are going to start today with our polls, but Zoom has moved everything just to keep us on our toes. So there's the poll for you. And if you want to tell us a little bit about your role, that would be great. What grade band do you work with, and how familiar are you with our topic today? We're talking about school culture. I'm going to take a look at that chat while we take a look at that. I see some awesome tribal land acknowledgement. Duwamish, Shahilas, Miss Lally, welcome. Ronnie's also put in the chat our resource sheet and our slides. So if you want to check those out, you can see them there. And it looks like in our audience today, we have quite a few administrators and the counselors, not as many teachers. We've got a good handful of OSPI and ESD and district office folks and some school improvement folks as well. Welcome. A lot of middle or high school. And people feel somewhat familiar with our topic already, so that's great. And you can see the results there if you'd like to. All right, so first up, we're going to have Dixie coming on to tell us a little bit about what OSPI has going on. From Dixie.
Thank you, Kefi. Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Dixie Grunenfelder. I'm the Executive Director of Student Engagement and Support here at OSPI. I want to thank you for taking the time to joining us today. I see many of you coming from district office, as your educators, some community members, and I don't take for granted that you're giving of your time to be here today to learn with us. So thank you. I also want to acknowledge our presenters today. Dr. Chuck Salina has been a colleague and served as a mentor of mine for many years. So to be presenting with him and sitting in space with him at any time is a pleasure for me. And Dave, you and the students from Sunnyside, thank you for coming and sharing all the phenomenal work that you're doing. I feel like the topic that we're covering today is really timely as we think about planning for the upcoming school year, reflecting on the systems that we spend so much time building and operating within, and our own individual behaviors and how we show up to work for ourselves and for our colleagues and for the students and families we serve. So a great opportunity to just reflect, refine, and get ready to launch a new school year. So really excited. One more thing I would like to share before getting into the framing slides is I feel like this work very nicely complements TPEP and the principal framework that many of you are familiar with, in that it offers a pragmatic way to develop leadership behaviors to support the work that you're trying to do. It cultivates a collaborative, healthy space to do the work that we need to do. It honors us as individuals. It supports our colleagues. And again, it supports the students and families that we keep center to the work that we're doing. So I hope you find those messages and those feelings and a way to connect this work to all the things that are on your plate right now. So why did we choose this topic at this time of the year? What we know through years and years of research across all grade levels is that when students feel connected to school, they are more successful. They also have an improved sense of well-being in lower substance use, better mental health, reduced violence. I'm competing against my seagull friends this morning, so I apologize for the noise if you're hearing that in the background. We also know that there are students right now that are struggling a bit to find that connectedness. And so it's important to take a look at the systems and the behaviors that we have, especially for some of those students that are not as connected right now as we would like them to be. So for 2 decades of research, they've boiled down this idea of connectedness to 4 things. And the 4 kind of elements and foundations to school connectedness are summarized here on this slide. We are connected when we perceive that we are known and we are cared for. We are seen and visible. We belong to a group, a supportive group. So we are individually seen, we are part of a group. We also, part of connectedness is feeling like we're giving back, and we perceive ourselves as supporting the others in our group and in our community. And lastly, when we feel like we are accepted for who we are as individuals. Just reading that slide is empowering to me. In full transparency. So just quickly, a couple of data points that I pulled in support of this work. If we were doubting that commitment to school and connectedness impacts student success, I wanted to show data from the 2023 Healthy Youth Survey for 8th and 10th graders around commitment to school and self-reported grades. And in this instant, when we talk about commitment to school, the definition of that is students find the schoolwork meaningful and important. They're interested in the coursework and the things that they're learning at school. They think the learning is connected to what they want later in life. They enjoy being at school and that they're attending. They're showing up. So all of those components weave together for this measure of commitment. And when we look, significant differences across students who report, I feel connected versus I don't feel connected, and the grades that they're reporting. Continuing on with that same definition of commitment to school in 10th graders specifically. So coursework is meaningful. They see it connected to their goals. They enjoy what they're learning. They enjoy being in the school space, and they're showing up and engaging in that community. When students say they're committed, they also perceive that there is help when they need it, compared to those students who are a little bit more disconnected, not feeling that sense of connection and thinking there is someone there to help them. So this is just related, not causation, but definitely there's some relationship there that we see. And what I would believe across this data at the state level, that we would see national data and your local school climate data around the adults in your buildings and in your systems, the trends are probably the same. I would venture a guess that if staff are feeling like their work is meaningful, they're engaged, they're feeling good, they're more apt to be seeing success and feeling like they've got the help they need to do the work. So this is information straight from the Powerless to Powerful work that we're going to hear more about from Dr. Selena here in a minute. And what it summarizes for me is that students feel more connected when we intentionally look at this concept, right? When we're explicitly exhibiting behaviors to show that we care, we know them at an individual level, and we're willing to show up and help when they need it. Similarly with staff. As leaders, if we show up and we show that we care, we put the systems in place to support our educators and school leaders, and we assist them in the work they need to do to help the students, we create a culture for learning. Culture for learning for staff, culture for learning for students. So just to summarize, double clicked there. All right, just to summarize my comments before I turn it over, how OSPI is supporting this work. We've got a couple things going. We certainly support this work by offering ways to measure connectedness, at least at the student level, through our Healthy Youth Survey data and the resources on askhys.net, the website that contains that information. There's fact sheets and a query tool where if you're a participant of the Healthy Youth Survey, you've got building level data. You could look more at a countywide or statewide level if you did not, and you probably have school climate surveys available there too. But at the state level, we're supporting measuring connectedness in an intentional way. We want to help develop systems of support to support the work. And this is a shout out to a peer learning network that we're repeating. It's an ongoing professional learning network that will kick off again this fall. So stay tuned. You'll get more information just for participating in the webinar today about that learning network. So if you're interested in this work or you're fully engaged in it already, consider coming with your leadership team and being a part of our learning network this fall and through this school year. The other thing we try to do is prioritize connections through our programming and the systems work that we do. Really looking at those components that we're talking about, and whether it's a release of a grant or a professional development opportunity, really trying to include this idea of building cultures for learning and the systems that need to be in place to do that as a core message and a foundation to the work that we do. So on that note, I want to thank you again for being here. Thank you for the opportunity to frame up today. And I really look forward to hearing from Dr. Selena and our leaders from Sunnyside today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dixie, for that lead in, as well said. And we are truly excited to share with you. Go back one if you could. Thank you. And I want to start off sharing kind of the big ideas that we've learned from, along with Dr. Gerst and myself, through our powerless to powerful research and activities about the power behind school culture. Because as Dixie said, school connectedness is a key to success. We actually believe that achievement is a byproduct, if you will, a measurement of the health of the school culture. So we're going to look at three big ideas today. First, you know, how a culture for learning allows not only me, but my colleagues to live my purpose, my why I do what I do. But it's easy to look at it from if you will, a clinical lens. What are the factors of a school culture? But there really is the second part, what do leaders say and do to make it happen? What are the behaviors that demonstrate my core beliefs that allows others to be their best self? We're going to look at it first of all, through an adult lens. That would be adult to adult. And then we're going to move in with Dave and our students who really understand the power of school culture and how student behaviors really can be somewhat your strongest, especially from grade 7 up, the strongest factors to build a living, loving culture that supports student and adult learning. And we hope that you leave today developing some personal action steps that you might try out in the field. The question we always ask, based on what I learned today, what's different tomorrow? So we'll end with hopefully with some questions and some personal commitments. Go ahead, Dave.
Thanks, Chuck. Before I get started, I want to do let me go back one. I want to do a quick shout out for SHS admin and our staff and student body, district office. They allow me to do this work each and every day. Thank you, Chuck, for the impact you've had on me and impacted me to do this work too. So Before we get started though, I want you to think about an adult in your life that made it in a positive impact on you. I want you to think about the things they said and did that made you feel your best self. And as you're thinking about that, you can jot down some notes. If you'd put that in the chat, just so we can see what are the things they said and did that made you brought out your best self. We're going to come back to that a little bit later, but if you'd participate by doing that, it'd be amazing.
Dr. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate that. And I hope you put in the chat some of the things what did they say and do? When you think about and reflect, what does give your professional life purpose and meaning? I think we all got into the profession of helping others be their best selves. And we know that a lot of people leave the profession because they can't actualize their mission, their purpose. In fact, I would say organizationally and institutionally, we often put barriers in the way that hinders people from living their mission or purpose. So today we're going to concentrate, and I think what's unique about P2P in our research is we really boil down to what are the behaviors that support my values to send a consistent message. What do I say and what do I do that has consequences to the performance of the organization or the school culture? School culture is a lot different than school climate. Climate can come and go, good weather, bad weather, but culture sees people through because it's an environment where people are engaged and working differently together toward a common ideal. Next slide, please.
Oops.
So Dixie hit on these, what we call, back one, Dave.
Gotcha.
Dixie hit on this earlier, and the building blocks, we call it CBE. To connect, the first is connect to the school. We use that as a global term, but I think we need to break down what does it mean to connect people to the school. It's not a feel-good, congenial thing, but people connecting to the school means they know how they fit into the well-being of the school. And know this is important for adults. Where do I fit in to the well-being of achieving something that I can't achieve by myself? And same with students. Where do they fit in to the well-being of the school to make it a healthy place that fits into what the mission of the organization is? This provides a sense of, I guess in Greenleaf's term, provides a sense of self-worth. Relationships. Relationships is not just a feel-good term. Relationships are grounded in how do we support each other in achieving individual and group goals. So it's about doing something 1 + 1 = 3, that notion of synergy. And so it moves from a feel-good that it becomes an efficacy building the capacity. And that results in a sense of belonging. And the last is E, or envision their future. So our acronym CBE, this notion of envisioning their future, is we adults and students have a clear understanding of what's next. So it's not this big, huge global goal, but how do we move incrementally to new ideals together? And that is what gives us a sense of hopefulness. And all three of these today are so needed in our school for our adults and students, because we often operate that our schools are broken. They need to be fixed. And that's why we look externally versus internally to create a healthy culture where in reality, we can fix ourselves. So our working definition that Dr. Kurtz and myself came up with is a kind of an environment of school culture is an environment that demonstrates a clear belief that collaborative processes and systemic supports. And today we're going to not go much too deep in systemic supports, but more about the process collaboration and how do we build CBE to students and staff so they can succeed and thrive. The factors that we found in outlying schools, and I know in our own research, or when I was turnaround principal at Sunnyside, there was immediate evidence that we started trusting each other differently. We know those are served, and we know that leadership's role is to serve parents, obviously, and community and kids. but their primary customer in this process is the staff that they serve and helping them be their best self. Each of us are vested in our students through our own lens, and players have a voice, meaning they can see themselves in the process of collaborative inquiry. And leadership. This is an interesting notion. When I talk to leaders, I ask them, what do you want to do differently? And they really talk about what they want others to do. The real question is, what do I want to do to be accountable for the culture and the well-being of the school? Much like staff are accountable for the culture in their classroom, administrators are accountable for the culture of the school. Next slide, Dave. You know, this really, if you want to do a fast and dirty overview of the current reality of your school culture, the CES, and we have our own little kind of reflective tool, but this CE data really gives you kind of a bird's eye snapshot of the notion of the health of the culture of a school building. As you can see, in April 2010, trust and integrity, they measured trust in 5 ways: integrity, openness, reliability, caring, and competence. And you can see it was quite low. By 2012, 13, those numbers jumped almost to the identical numbers of May 2016. We wanted to see over short periods of time, and could it be sustained over time, the nature of the relationship between admin and staff. And you can see the impact it had in graduation rate. I think it went from 65 to 80 something, and then finally into the 90%. The staff relationships, you can see where it started. They called the I-they gap. I welcome new ideas, but my colleague, not so much. And you can see in 2010, I really like new ideas, but my staff, not too much. But that gap, you can see the dramatic decrease in innovation, dramatic decrease in the gap as it works to dealing with change and the willingness to be held accountable. You know, it's kind of a funny thing. When I first arrived in 2010-11 there, the math department was engaged in some really heavy professional development. And the first year they were engaged in it, they were averaging about 300 Fs a semester, 300 Fs. The second year, it was 400 Fs. When I started analyzing it, I asked the consultant, if we go one more year, could we have 500 Fs for doing this? And he said, actually, the comment was, if leadership would only hold staff to do the expectations of the professional development, test scores would increase. And we know that when we have external, and we said goodbye and said, we can figure this out ourselves. It really is about how do we engage in working differently together. I was talking to a superintendent the other day, in fact, who had spent 3 years on assessment and teaching practices and saw modest gains in student performance. And I said, go back one slide, Dave. I said, let's take a look at these factors by school. And let's analyze which schools have healthy school cultures and which ones do not, instead of looking at averages across the district. And what we found, again, those that had these factors in place, and we have better, deeper indicators of these, they had better, obviously better scores. So I guess what I'm saying is, as I said earlier, achievement is a byproduct of how adults play with each other. Back to the slide. What we also found over time, when you look at this slide here again, the more that, if you see the right-hand side, when the gap was so large, it actually fostered coalitions within the staff. Those who trusted admin, those who didn't. Pretty soon, those became kind of the favorite child versus those who weren't. Coalition formation is really a sign of an unhealthy culture. So when we reflect on the behaviors leaders do, I want you to reflect about those factors and indicators in your school culture and what it looks like. But what I want to emphasize, if we go to the next slide, what happens when the school culture and that gap is so great, the blame game starts. Admin blames parents and teachers. Teachers blame admin and kids. But it's really sad is when I started to interview kids, and my colleague Suzanne Gertz interviewed kids, we found out kids started saying, you know what? It's our fault. Mister, this is Sunnyside. What would you expect? It was a sad day that because of the adults of the behavior, kids started blaming themselves for their poor performance. What Dave's going to share here was totally unsolicited in 2011. In 1 year, the essence of students rising above the ruckus. Dave?
Thanks, Chuck. So Christine Kim, she was our valedictorian in 2011. And the other thing we should know is that we were going under a major reconstruction of the school at the same time, rebuild and remodeling. So there was a lot of messy parts in our school during this time. But it was super cool to see how, as adults began to treat each other differently, the students began to believe in themselves. And I think now, I know now, if you were to come into our commons and whatever university is here, they'd say, of course you're here. This is Sunnyside. Why wouldn't you be here? But anyway, so Christine Kim, let me read this to you. Again, it shows you how the student body began to see themselves. We as an entire high school started to care about our attendance, grades, and graduation. Not only that, but we started to care about other people too. You could hear people say, come to class. We want off-campus lunch. Get your grades up. You can graduate. These are the kinds of changes are what were really important this year. It is what defined us from the rest of the classes that have graduated at Sunnyside High School. We were the beginning of this amazing change, but we are certainly not the end. Christine Kim, valedictorian class of 2011. And again, it was seeing the change happen in our building. I sometimes get choked up just reading this quote because it really was amazing to see the impact it can have on your student body. We're fortunate today we have a 2010 graduate. So before the transformation, and she has, you know, a different little story to share about our school, but you can show from where we were to where we went. And we're going to share a little bit later about where we are now too. So Brisa, welcome and thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you for having me. My name is Brisa Sanchez Cornejo. I am the current Substance Use Prevention Intervention Program Supervisor in the Mental Health Systems team at OSPI. And I've been connected to school systems going on 13 years now. I joined the team at OSPI this year. In my current work, I support the adoption of systemic practices that allow youth, families, and school staff to thrive in ever-changing environments with different needs in responsive and culturally appropriate ways. Looking back at my own school experience, I can see where my passion for supporting school and environments came from. So let's go back in time. Let's go back in time to 14 years ago. I was a Sunnyside High School's class of 2010 student. At the time, I was a Running Start student and met most of my required credits except a half credit. In my senior year, looking for resources and support to make sure that I graduated and that I had all my credits to walk with my class, I sought out my counselors to receive guidance on what I needed to do and by when. We went back and forth several times, but could not find consensus. Eventually, I resorted to speaking to the principals. Unfortunately, we were unable to problem solve together either. In my frustration, I finally shared that I planned to get my GED if I could not complete my credits in time to graduate and walk with my class. Fortunately, we were then able to problem solve, and I did graduate with my class on time and with a high school diploma. Although this situation was difficult, I still remember my favorite teachers and was very fortunate to have been able to participate in different programs that enhanced my experience as a high school student. The elements were there, but the system was struggling as I was facing. In my present, I am very privileged in my role with OSPI to be able to serve multiple school districts to help strengthen systems so that current and future students, staff, and administrators feel they have the tools they need to thrive in their unique school environments. Thank you for letting me share my story. Back to you, Dave.
Thanks, Brisa. Again, she hits on some very key points there. There was a lot of people working in silos, trying to do the right work, cared about kids, but when we were able to put the systems in place and add in, became accountable for the culture, as Drucker would say, culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's just That's the big piece of the school. And as a school leaders and school teachers, you know, this piece of school, it's your culture of your classroom or your culture of your building. It's super important.
So when we talk about a culture for learning, a healthy school culture, these are things that start, it's important to look at staff as individuals versus percentages of, oh, these are my outstanding teachers. These are the teachers I wish I didn't have, kind of thing. And I'm sure that doesn't happen in your school, but thinking about if only I didn't have this person or this person, it would be so much better. Just remember, when we let go of our 7, 8, 9 batters, we have new 7 and 8, 9 batters. So I want you to see people as individuals, or staff as individuals. And when you start reflecting, how do I build leadership capacity with staff in a way, in a safe and healthy culture? How do you help folks who are used to being told what to do understand and feel comfortable with the collaborative process without easy answers? How do people engage with Mission Impossible staff in ways that show you trust them and want to partner with them? Most of the time, again, we start looking at this notion of fixing people, sending them to more trainings, getting larger commitments without reflecting about CBE. What are their strengths? What are their interests? What are their needs? And how do I connect them to the vision and the purpose of the building? Next slide, please. So we have, in our work of Powerless to Powerful, and from our research and even our experiences, we've come up with 2 frameworks. The first is the conceptual framework, and that we're going to cover somewhat today. And it really starts drilling down, as Dixie said so nicely, how this complements the work of TPEP and the AWSB frameworks. What are the behaviors? What do I need to say and do that creates this? Because I know everyone wants a healthy culture where people are engaged in problem solving and connecting people to the work. So we're going to take a look briefly at the conceptual framework and I want you to reflect on the trainings and the behaviors as we drill down deeper in this. It's a very simple model around what do I say and do around these 3 themes or big ideas. It's a consolidation of the research of others. And the first is the notion of academic press. How do I provide specific direction embedded in standards, goals, and beliefs of success for everyone? We're very good, and if we had time, it'd be fun to explore even deeper, but we're very good about having high expectations and standards. In fact, they're coming at us left and right from external forces. But in the end, do we really believe we can do these things? Do we really believe the people I work with can do these things? A lot of times that's how computer-assisted learning came about. We really didn't believe teachers could do the job in the 70s. We really focused on more through computer-assisted learning. Do we really believe we have the capacity to do this work in each person that we know and serve? The next is this notion of social support. That's that notion that Dixie hit on, that notion of individual and group caring. Do I know each person's strengths, interests, and needs? And how do I come alongside them based on their strengths, interests, and needs? This is bigger than systemic supports, which is more discussed in the action framework. This is grounded in knowing the people you serve and how do I walk with them. And the glue that holds it together is something, it's deeper than just relational. It's more than being congenial. It's how do I create a collaborative environment where we build efficacy and say, okay, bring it on. We can handle anything you bring to us, because we know how to work together, where we feel safe with each other, but not necessarily comfortable. They view you as the leader having something to offer. And this is more around systemic supports, engaging them in problem solving, etc. And the most important in this is providing time and expertise. It's hard to do all 3. Once in a while, we feel safe and we have something to offer, but a lot of times we feel like we're torn away. I don't have time right now. I have to go to district office, or gee, I got to go to a budget meeting, and I think sometimes we're nervous about how to deal with the unknown. So we withdraw from providing time as we work in the known, which is kind of tangible management things. But providing time and expertise is engaging each other in the work of moving to the unknown. Now, when the academic press and social support and trust are working in harmony, these start overlapping because they're not just one or the other, they work together in harmony. The culture for learning, the center circle, actually gets larger as we learn to work together. Next slide, please.
Before we move on to that.
Oh, yeah, Dave. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you for earlier putting in your thoughts about that person, the adult that made an impact in your life. And it was cool to read the notes that you wrote in there. And as you were describing things, the support that you got, people putting in extra time to give you help. Somebody put in there about holding me accountable. And that's where that feeling safe, but not always comfortable, because when you're being held accountable, it doesn't always feel comfortable, but you know that they've got that high expectation for you, and they remind you that you can meet that goal. So again, if you think about the importance of this framework in your own life, you can see why definitely it would be an impactful framework to have in your schools for your staff and your students.
You can use this framework almost as a graphic organizer, thinking about all the training you've done, all the experience you've done. You can actually start framing in where each of these things fit in, of what do I say and do to send a message that creates a culture for learning. So when we look at, we're going to probably, for the next little while, spend probably the most amount of time around the theme relational trust. And there's 4 levels that we want to look at, and we're going to spend a little bit of time on adult to adult, meaning as we saw, how do staff perceive each other, more importantly, how does staff perceive admin? And then we'll jump over to student, and Dave and his students are going to share student to student and student to adult. But I want you to think about, and again, in our 2 books, we define a little bit deeper, and we have some resources online, but think about the behaviors. And again, especially with those people that don't feel connected to the work. How do you encourage them if you don't believe in them or expect great things or support them? It's probably hard to do some of these behaviors, but how in your work do you encourage people to take risks? How do you challenge them in a safe model? How do they see you respecting and drawing upon my expertise? And what are those behaviors that you say and do to make that happen? Putting in time. Look, this is not becoming a heroic leader or the leader that goes around fixing things for people. Putting in time means, how do I come alongside and create systemic supports in their work? Engage in problem solving with them, building that capacity to identify the current reality, moving to an ideal. Taking time to listen to what's really bothering them, not their complaints, but what's the deep meaning behind what they're telling you. And then having something to offer is not another resource. That's how we tend to do it. Oh, I'll get you another this or that. It's providing insight that helps them grow. And you know their strengths and interests, and that support the school. And how do you connect their strengths and interests to the vision, a vision to the true north? So living the conceptual framework and learning new behaviors. Next slide. No, back one. Down one. It's not moving quick. There's nothing in between. Okay, I must have let. But what I want to leave you with is leadership in the conceptual framework is really, if you want to create a healthy school culture, we call it learning new behaviors to change old beliefs. That means if you feel like you want to move your school forward, what can I do differently to alter the course of the culture of the school so people behave differently with each other? Do you really believe that through real collaborative processes where we behave differently together, we can start answering our own questions and declare, I believe the art of leadership is creating a culture where people declare what they're willing to be held accountable for. And so we're going to take a minute to talk about adult relational trust, where there's shared planning, there's ongoing processes in reality to be able to do action research to solve our own problems. As I turn it over to Dave, I remember when OSPI came in and studied, not OSPI, the federal, after the grant, the turnaround grant, they studied the high school. And what they remarked, yeah, there was some improvement in instructional practice, but what really improved was ability for people to engage in problem solving and then apply what they developed through their problem solving process. So, and it's really grounded in the notion of action research. So Dave's going to take us a little bit through what we call the power of one-on-one in building relational trust, adult to adult. Dave?
Thanks, Chuck. So this is Rosa Lobostal. She's an assistant principal at one of our elementary schools. And we have a video here, and she's going to go through her experience in her first year and how she used one-on-one with adults to build relational trust. Kathy, I might need your help here on this to get the video.
I knew that a big job that lay ahead of me if I wanted to enact any change would be to build relational trust. And in order to do that, I knew I had three main components that needed to be met. I needed to spend time with my staff. I needed to show them, especially being new, that I had something to offer. And I also, extremely important, I needed to make them feel safe or build a structure or some time with them that helped them feel safe in the school community and safe to express to me some of their concerns. So a great opportunity that I had to do that was our behavior systems. I had identified an issue that staff felt that the behavior systems needed some improvement, and I knew that this would be a great opportunity to build relational trust with them. In order to do that, I did a couple one-on-ones, and through talking with those staff and helping identify the problems and where they wanted to go, I put together a behavior action team, and that really allowed me to take the time. We paid them for their time. It showed them that we valued their time being there, and we came together and spent that time together talking and identifying the issue of behavior. I also knew that I needed to bring them something to offer with behavior. I had to show them that I had some ideas and I had some ways that I thought that we could improve our systems here. So I brought some kind of structures and formats, major versus minor behavior matrix that I thought that we could build together, some office discipline procedures, referral forms, those kind of things that were all from the lens of clarifying our systems and helping make teachers and paras, every staff life easier with students while managing behavior effectively. So that kind of was my something to offer that I brought to the staff meeting that day. The other thing was we really needed staff to feel safe at that meeting because it's pretty vulnerable to put yourself out there. I was new, but Mr. Canale was at those meetings. He was not new. And for staff to be able to express things that they did not feel that were going well, they needed to feel safe. And we got a lot of great information that day. They also needed to feel safe in expressing their ideal because that's not the same for everybody. So we really had to build that together. So we worked together that day. We identified the problem. We spent some time together talking about where we wanted to go from there, building common products and common agreements. And I think really from that moment, I was able to have an impact and build trust with staff, and that helped them to see now maybe the other things that we're going to take on throughout the year, that I had built that relational trust with them. So my new things that I worked on with them, they knew they had more faith in the process.
All right, we'll go to the next slide. All right, and you heard Rosa, she said she did a couple of one-on-ones, but I know Rosa, she probably did 100. But again, those one-on-ones are, when you hear that first time, you may think it's like going in, just checking, hey, how are you doing? And those are important. You definitely need to build relationships with staff, but this was really more of a chance to do some action research around an issue. And as she was talking about it, it was around the behavior system. She was able to do those one-on-ones, allowed her to diagnose what was really going on in that school. There was a lack of trust. Just all those different things that were going on that she learned through there. She linked it to they linked it to their behavior system. And it was about improving social, emotional, and behavior with their student body. And it was something that was built. And again, you heard her talk about like this process happened around behavior, but they were able to do this because of the work with the one-on-ones and getting the feedback and did we miss anything, to be able to do it with other different systems in their school. And it really gives the leadership what's currently happening in your school and what's next. We've had a chance to do that this year in our school. I've been tasked with creating a green behavior system, and probably most people on here have the PBIS and different types of ways of encouraging good behavior. But many times schools think about the red supports and what are we doing to make sure our red behavior kids behave better. They don't usually think about the green behavior kids and that big group in the middle. And what do you do to reinforce the behaviors that you want in your school? So I had a chance to do a lot of one-on-ones. I've talked to a bunch of teachers about this idea, and they're like, yeah, it makes sense to me. And what if we did this? Could you add this to our advisory so that we could see how many points our advisory kids are getting each week? So it's around a real thing, and it's I'm excited to put this into action this fall when school gets going again. And I've even had a chance to do one-on-ones with students to talk about the idea of this. And you know, it gives you your current reality. It lets you know you've linked it to a behavior system or whatever system you're trying to focus on. And it gives staff input, and they can see their thinking in the system as you're building it too.
So in the end, when you think about one-on-ones, as we get in a moment, student voice here, we can't overstate it's leadership getting their house in order of systems of support and hearing from people of what's next and how to build on that. There are some related handouts, and I'm not sure where they're located, that give you a deeper understanding of one-on-ones that are available through this webinar, that maybe if you take a deeper look, you might think about, how do I know my school on a regular, ongoing basis? But a good place to start, just to scan what adults are thinking, if you will, around the health of your culture. These are 3 simple questions I ask almost daily in our schools that I work with. Does your administrator respect you, which is relational trust? Do you get help when you need it, social support? Are you growing as a teacher, academic press? But here's what's fun to do with students all the time. Ask the same kind of questions to students. Do your teachers care about and like you? Do you get help when you need it, and are you learning? Start looking and collecting data of themes and patterns and see if you can identify what can we do differently school-wide to support my findings. I'm going to now turn it over to Dave and really talk about, now we've talked about adult to adult somewhat, creating a culture for learning, which we just barely got to the surface. But remember, how adults behave with each other really impacts how students perceive themselves and how they fit into the well-being of the school. So now we'll hear student voice on how they help foster a culture for learning. Dave?
Thanks, Chuck. So CBE, we talked about this earlier. Chuck talked about the principles and the actions and the behaviors that go with this. So we start teaching Connect, Build, and Envision. We have our Grizzly Academy coming up next week, Monday and Tuesday, and we'll introduce the principles of this. We'll talk about what does it look like at Slangside High School? What are we doing as we do our activities? You're going to hear this. Like the girls are going to talk about the thinking that really goes into different activities. So we teach it to our students, definitely. And then in our senior projects, you'll hear the seniors as they're doing their presentations, you'll hear them talk about the importance of connecting, the importance of building, and the importance of envisioning. This slide here, hopefully you can see it. What's important to adults becomes important for students. Chuck, remember the very first assembly I said to him, I said, man, it was packed. Wouldn't it be great if all these kids would come to every class, every period? And so that was the beginning of the changes in our school. And you can see on here, this is our PEP assembly scoring rubric. And again, what's important to adults becomes important to students. They want to win the PEP stick in our PEP assemblies. So we highlight passing classes, attendance, and then sportsmanship, our culture, how are we treating each other? So those are built into the scoring and winning it. You can have all the spirit in the world, but if you don't, and rah-rah, but if you don't have the things that are important to building culture, then you're not going to be as successful as you can be. All right, so Maya and Angelique, they're going to talk about, we have three big events that we have lots of events, but they're going to talk about the thinking that goes into it. And then at the end, also, Angelique's going to talk about peer-to-peer support and how that can look in your school and the impact and the importance of it.
Hi guys, my name is Maya Morales. I'm a senior here at Sunnyside High School, and I'm the ASB president. In the statewide, I am the WIAA student athlete representative here at Sunnyside High School. So today we're going to be talking about an event here at Sunnyside High School, which is the Veterans Day Assembly. So in the next couple of slides, they're going to look a little similar, but our main focus here is CBE. So in the beginning of in the waiting room, when we were waiting, our song was playing. So our song name is Back Home. And that song, I'm telling you right now, that song is played like 100 times every single year, every single assembly. The moment you walk in, it's playing. So that is our song here at Sunnyside High School. So to begin with, there may be other schools that do assemblies, Veteran Day assemblies to be specific, activities and all that. But here at Sunnyside High School, the difference between us is a self-worth and why we do these things. So the sense of belonging is how we all feel connected. So the Veterans Day Assembly is a week-long process. Our leadership class, our third period, works long. We do the scripts and all, but we also talk to our educators here at Sunnyside High School. So a week before, our advisory classes have like a schedule, and the teachers are informed on what they're doing. So it's not like a quick, like, oh, we're gonna go in, but they know in advance. Each educator talks to the students here at Sunnyside High School. They know, and even though the freshmen or like the seniors, there's a difference, obviously, the seniors have gone before and the freshmen haven't, but the freshmen automatically click. The moment you walk into that gym, it's like complete silence. Everyone knows their priorities. Everyone's there for the same reason, and everyone is just all together and to be able to celebrate and represent those around us. So our school provides a variety of opportunities for students to discover their passions and find their niche. With over 30 clubs and activities, there's something for everyone to be connected with and excel in. So if you're passionate about academics, or whether it's to thrive, to be challenged, to reach your full potential, if you adore arts, we promise you here at SHS, you'll fit right in. There's always something for you and your specific likings, whether it's sports or any other interests. There's always a perfect position for you. Should we go to the next slide? Yeah. So there's this quote that a couple of weeks ago, I went to ASB camp. And this quote was told and mentioned a lot. It's "People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it" by Simon Sinek. And this quote is kind of like representing your school culture. So obviously each school can be forward and do so many activities. They can provide so many reasons to come to school, but it's the purpose of why a student actually wants to school. So it's not like they're forced to, but they want to come to school. So our commitment to inclusive extends to every building and classroom and culture where all the students feel connected with the staff here at SHS, and understanding their why and well-being of school fostering. And secondly, the importance of building like powerful relationships is also like reminded here. So in this slide, we're talking about our holiday lunch. So holiday lunch is always the Thursday before we go on to winter break. This lunch is where all of our school, we're a 4A school, so all of our students are shoved into our one cafeteria, and we do multiple like events or like activities. So we have our Mr. SHS candidates, they sing like Christmas, what are they called? Like carols, and during lunch, and they're just singing throughout the whole lunch. All the staff are dressed up. Everyone, as you can see in the photo, everyone dresses up to a formal wear. And even like literally, I'm telling you right now, all staff is just dressed up, and everyone is so ready to go to winter break, but two, for the lunch. The lunch is being served and it's amazing, but as well as like the decorating. So every event that we have here at SHS is weekly planned. It's not right off the bat like, oh, we're going to do that. So it's very put input, and it's very important for our staff and students to be here and be enjoying the moment. So is there anything you want to add? Okay. So our I can't even say it. philosophy is moving up. So we have a moving up assembly at the end of the year. It's kind of saying our goodbye. So all the work that our staff and student have been doing is a sense of belonging. So you will see in this assembly tiers, whether it's the seniors on the floor or the incoming freshmen, but especially the staff. So here are staff, we build connections, whether it's multiple staff, you have built a connection, but whether it's just one, everyone feels inclusive and together. And it's just like a powerful feeling in one gym, in one building, where the sense of belonging and hopefulness is like included. So it's an enriching feeling of all the accomplishments you have done throughout the school years. It's just like a powerful way to say goodbye and see what they do moving on. But you also like are breaking down and feeling what you have built up throughout the school years. So a couple weeks ago, as I mentioned, I went to an ASB camp. A lot of the leadership students attended, and we were all able to share our experiences or what each committee does at each school. And listening to other students and other schools speak was very deeply it was hard to understand what they do just because it's definitely different here at Sunnyside. I was able to compare our schools, and something about our school and their school is how deep our connections are, the reason for ours, and taking back from what they had said. And I brought it back here, and it's like reinforcing our why and reminding ourselves that all of us do this for a reason. Our staff and students are powerful to each one of them for a reason. Like, we just don't do stuff just for like what they want to do, but it's just very important to be reminded that each person has a purpose here, and each one of us will have a self-belonging here at Sunnyside, and you all will just feel included. But yeah.
All right. Angelique, share your story.
Hello, I'm Angelique Fernandez. I'm a senior here at Sunnyside High School. I'm also vice president as a class officer. And today I'm going to be talking about how, as a cheerleader, you're the one leading the crowd, but also everyone at SHS is already planning to lead. We've built so many relationships within one another and learned to grow, and the passion and energy at every assembly brings out like an amazing sight to see. And everyone comes out early just to come and sit front row at our assemblies. And we have a special environment that has been built, and it's going to continue to grow stronger and stronger every single year. And we have Martinez and Coach Ramos planning out every single assembly by every minute.
Share the algebra too.
Okay. And then,
So you can talk about the peer-to-peer support now.
okay. Okay. Last year, during the first semester of my junior year, I had took Algebra 2A. It was an amazing start, and I had all A's in all my assignments, and I was passing that class with an A. But as weeks had gone by, I started to fall a bit behind, and I was struggling to keep up a little bit, and I would stay after school whenever I could, and it just got harder for me to like keep trying to push myself to understand what the assignments were. And I wasn't getting a quick response back from my teacher because every student athlete was also falling behind, and it was like a struggle for all of us because one teacher couldn't help all the other students staying in struggling as well. And we had went like across the hallway to a different teacher at a certain time, and her teaching was different. So either way, the support that we were getting, it was a bit harder to try to push ourselves to understand. And I had to find different ways to catch up. And I've asked my classmates, and we were all like falling behind, so it was kind of hard. So I had went to my other sources, my cheer coach, my avid teachers, and Mr. Martinez, of what I should do and how I could get better. And they all told me to keep pushing, to try my hardest, and to give myself a break also because I was doing cheer, school, and work. But my coach got in touch with the senior, Elijah Wise, who was very advanced in math. And I had went in during my lunchtime and several times after school. And he was willing up to give up his time as well to help me understand everything that was going on. And he was an amazing tutor, and I was understanding things math questions and everything just started to click at once. And I was so close to not passing that class. And Elijah Wise and a few other classmates were helping me understand and review my papers and my final work. And I just needed a perfect score to pass. And with the help and the support that I was able to get from everyone and my teachers, my students, everyone, I was able to pass my final with an A and pass that class.
All right, so you can hear both the girls are really passionate about our high school. You can see the importance of teaching. The framework here, you can definitely see the importance of teaching CBE and the principles behind that and the impact it can have. And Angelique, again, the peer-to-peer support that she received. And it sometimes was, as you can get explained to you a little bit differently from a student's perspective. And she did a good job of getting the resources and then getting that support.
So today we've kind of covered the.
You gotta turn your mic back on. There you go.
One of the things that we know, and you saw in that earlier slide, that can you hear okay?
Yep.
Yeah, student-to-student social support is probably the most powerful change agent, but it's really taking time to teach students the principles of CBE, as Dave was talking about. It's very intentional of how we use the same language to develop what does connect, build, and envision mean. It becomes part of the school culture. The other thing is what we found in our research, data can be seen through a student lens as either a form of punishment, a consequence, or to use data as a form of caring. How does it inform knowing my school in real time? What can we do differently to support each other and be successful? And that's really, we don't have time today to go into the action framework about how do I use data to collaborate to provide systems in real time to support students and teachers. It's not just for students, but also supporting teachers in that process. So I know that we've probably viewed this at the 30,000 foot level, maybe even the 100,000 foot level, but I want you to think about your culture and what are my behaviors? What do I say and do to send a consistent message? Later, Dixie or we'll go over the resources available, or Kefi will, I should say. But are you a heroic leader that goes around trying to observe and then without acting and just kind of, am I going about trying to fix things? Or am I facilitating? And we talked really not nearly deep enough, and I hope you do look at those handouts. How do I use one-on-ones as a form of action research so I know my school? And one-on-ones are short. You should hopefully you touch base one-on-one with each staff 3 times a week in small group conversations. That allows you to find common ground. So people are never surprised and you're not surprised by what's going on in the culture of your school. Am I always advising, trying to be the expert and putting out fires, or am I supporting, learning through collaboration and inquiry process? That is, after I facilitate, do I find common ground? Then do I engage in problem solving? And then as I do the problem solving, is it about how to, or is it a strong belief that together we can figure out what can be most effective of what we're moving toward? Is it top down or is it collecting and sharing? I think I'll change this top down, bottom up. So knowing where I'm going, but not controlling it. So I'm always collecting, sharing, and redefining our current reality. So we're moving to a new reality. Am I selling or re-engaging? A culture for learning really builds on re-engaging people to their purpose, their mission. So re-engaging people is a sense of how do I build their sense of belonging, their sense of self-worth, and a sense of hopefulness. Because when we're better together, aligning that common ground, we are probably together on the what more often than not. It's the how we do our work. Our students from Sunny High School shared on us knowing our why, so we can clarify our what. And when those two are solid, the how is always messy and changing. But if we know our why and what, our how will follow together. And so are we trying to hold on and manage the process as a heroic leader? Or are we trying to take what we're re-engaging and problem solving, moving to something bigger than ourselves? And that's the notion of a healthy culture where we're collaborating, problem solving, and building a collective ownership and individual ownership, something bigger than myself. So I know we've done kind of a fast and dirty in an hour overview of what is a culture for learning. We've tried to define it. So we're now into questions and answers and some of the resources that are available to you. But I do hope you go back and look at the one-on-one handout and handouts that will provide you better insight of how I work with how to work with adults in your building.
Thanks, guys. We currently, so what I'm seeing is we don't have a lot in the Q&A, but I find this topic really interesting. So I wanted to throw out there, I mean, like you have these words CBE kind of at the center of your culture, right? And I know that so many schools have, I mean, you can pick an acronym for like power, and have like what are the things in there and like how does it come back to our acronym and all of that. How did you settle on CBE as like these are the things that we care about the most?
Well, I think that Dave kind of obviously, or not obviously, a lot of it is just kind of what is the synthesis of what it says to create a healthy culture, and a lot of it is taken from whether it be Cervani or Greenleaf or others. We use the term connectedness, but it's really the big ideas of the research is sense of belonging, sense of self-worth, and sense of hopefulness. And each one has a factor involved. Connecting takes that notion of sense of belonging or relationships, sense of self-worth, or envisioning my future. Hopefulness is from envisioning your future. So we tried to take the best of research and break it out into those three big ideas. So it came from what would be considered what are the factors of a healthy culture, and it really boiled down to these three big points.
Yeah, I feel like you were like ahead of the game. I feel like a lot of people have been in the last couple of years have really been like expanding on like we need to figure out belonging. Like belonging is the thing, and connection is the thing, and I feel like you get ahead of the game with CBE.
Well, I think we've played with it for 10 years, or actually longer than that, Kathy. And I think what we've tried to focus on, and I think more and more people are, we always say it's about the students, and we say it's about the culture and human beings. So those same factors are equally important for our adults in the community or parents as it is for the kids, and probably maybe even more so post-COVID. So I think leadership talks about how do I connect adults, and then when I have my house in order with adults, that's the beautiful thing. Adults teachers start responding differently to kids. I remember after the second year, students started reporting back to teachers, oh, they care more. And it was really hard to accept. And they said, we've always cared. What's the difference? Well, the difference was teachers felt cared for in a different way. And I'm not saying get along. It's kind of like when mom and dad are fighting, the kid thinks they're the fault sometimes, and it hurts. So it's caring is deeper than just, oh, we are a cheerleader for each other. We're doing something better together towards something we've chosen to do. But leadership lights that fuse. And that modeling with leadership with staff boils over to our students. So I can't overemphasize, and again, in an hour, it's hard to describe our coach's handbook. The shift in culture begins on how leadership leads the adults. It's not, I wish you would do more. It's what can we do differently to do more together.
Yeah, and Chuck, I feel like that's like such a cornerstone of your strategy is you have such like clear communication between staff and leadership so that you're always out there kind of data, doing that street data mining of like, what do y'all think about this thing? And if there's no surprise in a staff meeting, right?
Yeah, no surprises. You go to a faculty meeting, if you're surprised with something from your staff, or you surprise them, so that notion of leading with controlling is here's what I'm thinking about. what have I missed? And it's not just one person or the loudest person in the room influencing us. We're going around and talking to everybody, and it's, semi structured interview process of taking that information back, but it's not overthinking it. When you're done, what's different today, tomorrow, based on what I learned today. Dave, build on that a little bit on how it plays out.
Well, I think I was sharing earlier with the idea of the green systems and talking with 12 or 15 teachers about the idea of it. It makes sense to them. Like we're kicking ourselves, like, why haven't we done this before? And then they'll add, hey, what if you added this to it? Or could we do this too? One of the teachers said, just for like 2 weeks, just remind us beginning of the school year to think about 1 or 2 students from our class that exhibited the green behaviors we want. And he goes, it might be kind of at first, like rolling their eyes a little bit because you're asking them to do something the first 2 weeks, but he goes, it's going to do 2 things for them. It's going to kick this off. And then at the end of the day, they're going to think about, 1 or 2 students from every class. It was a positive. So you end your day in a positive, positive thinking around what's going well. So, and that staff member is going to see this happening in our green systems build. So he's like, oh, Dave listened and it makes sense. So, and then let me just add one more thing on the CBE. When you have your student body understanding the principles behind CBE and your student leaders, and then they're thinking about how am I building self-worth with our staff? How am I making sure there's a sense of belonging happening for our staff? When you have students thinking about adults that way, that's when your culture of your building can be off the charts. So
as a leadership team, I would challenge at the beginning of the year, look at CBE for each staff person. What do I need to do to seek out, not to build a relationship with them in the sense of the classic get along, but how do I do one-on-ones so I can appreciate their strengths to the well-being of the school? Another thing that we found in PLC is a simple thing. It's easy to say, what do they know? What do they don't know? What are we going to do if they do or don't know? Ask the question, is that kid connected to the school in your PLC work? It's focusing only on where's that kid and how do we connect them with our systems that support that kid differently, which is a different question that you should add, I think, in every PLC. Just like every administrator, as we talk about rolling out, we don't sit around and move people around like chess people. We go out and talk to them and say, what's your thoughts? This is what I'm thinking. Do I have it right? Engage.
Yeah, that's fascinating, Chuck. I was in a training yesterday with some of my 9th grade success grantees, and they were talking a little bit about, like, they're talking about a student from one of their schools and how they did a kid talk protocol on them, and they were kind of trying to figure out how to support them. And they asked them, like, how are you feeling about school? Like, what are your best places and the places you don't like as much? And he's like, oh, I hate lunch. I sit alone at lunch,
Mhm.
and like how heartbreaking that was for the staff. And so it kind of set off like let's survey kids and think about, like, where do they make friends? And like all of the adults in the room had assumed kids make friends at lunch, kids make friends at sports, at clubs, and overwhelmingly kids responded they make friends in classrooms. And so, like, how how do we set up our classrooms for those connections where kids can feel connected to them?
I think teachers are pretty darn good in general around instructional practice and assessment practice, better than we think. It's how do we help create a culture for learning in the classrooms? We model that for a culture for learning for adults in our school.
It's pretty powerful when it works, right? I mean, I think that it's awesome to hear that there's like an atmosphere in your assemblies and things, Dave. So I'm kind of curious for you, like, when you have, we got a question in our Q&A. Yay, Jocelyn, do you want to tell us what it is?
Thank you for saving us.
And I can chat with you guys forever.
We have a question that states, I can't remember who said this, but someone mentioned culture your classroom or culture your building. Can you provide an example?
yeah, well, I'll start with it, and Chuck, I'm sure you'll feed in. So I would think about the concepts of that framework. When we talk about, remember, I had you think about the adult that made a positive impact in you and what they did. If you look at the conceptual framework and you think of the factors around relational trust, that your students in your classroom feel safe, that they feel that you have something to offer and you're putting in time and energy, that creates the ability for your students to trust any of the support you might put in place. And then they're going to allow you to press them or push them to the expectations you set in place. If you haven't built that relational trust, then it's going to be hard to push them. And definitely, I don't know if they'll trust your supports. Same thing with staff. If you have built relational trust with your staff, it allows you to build the culture in your building where they're going to let you press because they know that you have a high expectation for them and you believe they can meet it. And then they'll trust the support you put in place. So I would say those would be a couple of the places that you would start with your school and your classroom culture. And then
I think that having something to offer for staff is really critical in terms of your systems work. And how do I use data to provide supports in real time? That's the biggest issue that I find with the behavior, academic supports, as one of the students shared her frustrations around the math in the grades. So creating that culture of having something, we ask a lot of teachers, and I think it's almost impossible to expect they're going to get all kids there, the numbers that they have to have, the content, etc. So really, how do we then diagnose and move forward and walk with teachers with systems of support in real time? A lot of times our programs are not systems. I mean, look how long it takes to get students, well, in my opinion, we create red kids academically because we are so late in responding and putting more and more on teachers, or look at the special ed referral process, what that takes. And in between, there's lots of things that we can do differently in real time. And we don't have time to go into that. But to me, creating your school-wide culture means what do I have to offer in real time to support teachers other than listening or saying, have you tried this, and putting it all on their back. So what do those systems look like, and how do we walk with teachers just like we expect teachers to walk with students?
You know, I'll get questions sometimes about school spirit. Hey, could you help our school get more school spirit? And if it was that easy and I just could wave my pencil at them and say, hey, there you go. And we talked about how the culture is built in the classroom. When it was a healthy classroom cultures, when you get that into the gym, my job's super easy then because they already have a healthy culture in the building. The assemblies are just like a kind of a formative check of how things are going. And so that's what I share back with them. When our staff get it, then the students will get it.
That's interesting. So Dave, when you talk about like the staff getting in and everything, how are you putting that into staff meetings? Like, how is the staff getting messages, do you think?
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
How are you communicating it to the staff? Like, is that happening in staff meetings, or is it just leadership one-on-ones? Are you just emphasizing?
Like the principles of CBE, we'll refresh this in the beginning in the fall, but I may have Maya and Angelique come and share with our staff. They don't know that yet about the reason CBE is important to them. And when they can see the thought from the student body going into how do we build self-worth with our staff? How do we build a sense of belonging? How do we build hopefulness for them? That is going into the Veterans Day Assembly, because the work that they're doing, prepping our kids for that assembly. And you come out of that we were talking about this, it's getting done with the Veterans Day Assembly. You have this rush like you do after a PEP assembly, but for the opposite reason. You have 2,000 students that are sitting quietly for 45 minutes, showing respect for community members that have come in to be honored for Veterans Day. But our staff were a big piece of that. You couldn't just do it by yourself. We used to try that, and it's hard because you don't have access to 2,000 kids all at one time, but you do have access through the staff that you're working with to share your why and get them on board with you.
So the truism is the more I support staff correctly, the more the staff will support their students. And then operating thing is supporting correctly. And what does that mean? And that's that shared planning, problem solving, and systems.
Yeah, collaborative culture.
Yes, yes. Easy to say, easy to understand, really hard to do. And hopefully today we drill down to some of the behaviors that leaders do to make that happen. But obviously it's more sophisticated than what we were able to cover today.
Yeah, well, and if people want to learn more about that Powerless to Powerful network and work with Chuck, we are going to have support for that this fall. So be looking out for that in our newsletters coming up.
One thing I would say on that too, it's easy to let slip if you're not careful. And if you put the principles of P2P in place, it's easy to, you're able to self-correct. And so, that's an important piece too. So this culture can, if you're not on top of it and you start to get complacent, the culture will get complacent.
Yeah, you got to keep working at it, right? Refresh. I mean, I think that that's kind of like the beauty of the one-on-ones too, is that you constantly get new information, right? And so you're kind of out there figuring out what you can do. Let's go on. We got a few resources to share. So I'm gonna go back to these slides for a minute. We hope you spread these ideas to people in your circle, your leadership team, maybe the people you're working with as a teacher in your professional learning community, or maybe even talk with some students as they're coming in. We always love to hear from students. We have a couple of resources to share. As always, as you are looking for funding for things, we want to encourage you to look at our Unlocking Federal and State Program Funds to Support Student Success document. It is a great resource, and I believe it is getting a refresh right now, so there should be new stuff coming your way. We have our Engage newsletter that comes out once a month that has the materials from our webinars. Often it has an article from one of our speakers full of activities that you can do at your staff meetings if you're interested in that. We do have a Powerful page on OSPI's site. So if you're interested in kind of browsing through some of the tools there and videos, Dr. Selena has done so much work to make that beautiful for us and to offer some really helpful tools there. If you want to check out Sunnyside's site, you can do that as well. And there's books. So I did a terrible job introducing Chuck. Chuck is an author, a co-author of Powerless to Powerful and Transforming Schools with Systems Culture or Systems Change. Both of those books are awesome and talk more extensively about these ideas and the behaviors that are going to get you back to your why. So check those out as well. And of course, we will always connect with you at OSPF as well. Next month, we are going to talk about college and career pathways for students with disabilities. It should be a really great webinar. We have a few people from OSPI coming over just to talk about their specialties and shine a light on what this can look like. We do have an evaluation, so I'm going to launch the poll around that. And if you, when the webinar closes out, we do have our feedback survey. And so if you'd like to tell us speakers you're interested in hearing from or questions you have or ideas for shows, we are always interested in your feedback and we review those every single month. So we really do appreciate you taking the time to do that. And for listeners who want to get clock hours, if you join live today, you're already registered for the year through Zoom, and you should be getting automatic reminders a day and an hour before the webinar starts. You'll also need to register for those clock hours monthly in PD Enroller. PD Enroller is going to send you an evaluation, and we verify your attendance and then release the hours. If you are watching the video later, the process changes a little bit. So you complete the feedback survey. It's on our page if you want to check that out. And then that just signals to us that you watched the video. And then we verify your attendance every couple of weeks. And then we'll register you in PD Enroller and release your hours. And if you have questions about this, Ronnie Larson's awesome. She does our clock hour support. So you can email her at this email address as well. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next month. I hope the beginning of school is awesome for everybody.